Remember when Mercedes won 3 out of 4 races before the summer break to re-establish itself as a Formula 1 powerhouse? Well, that run feels like a very long time ago now, because since then the results have trailed off. That run of victories followed the introduction of the famous new front wing. That's a part that Red Bull team principal Christian Horner has highlighted as key to the progress made by Mercedes and McLaren. Yet after that spike of form, things have become more difficult. Other than Russell's third place in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, results have been hard to come by. The front wing first appeared on Russell's car at the 8th race of the season in Monaco in late May, then was run by both drivers at the next race in Canada. There, Russell took pole position to kickstart the Mercedes golden run. Now, it's important to stress that while Mercedes took a great leap forward, those 3 wins weren't all the consequence of dominant pace. Russell won in Austria thanks to the late collision between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, inheriting the victory due to his strong run to third prior to that. At Silverstone, McLaren really should have won, but for strategic errors, although Mercedes locked out the front row. That reflects how well the car goes on quicker circuits. That is also why Mercedes went well at Spa, although Max Verstappen's grid penalty helped Mercedes out there. But it was inevitable that Mercedes couldn't keep up that success rate. After Spa, Mercedes started to race its upgraded floor, but it was removed from the car for the recent Azerbaijan Grand Prix where Russell took that fortuitous podium finish. So what exactly is going wrong for Mercedes? The first hints of a concern with the floor arose when the upgrade package made its debut during Friday practice at Spa. Hamilton said after the 2 free practice sessions that the car wasn't feeling particularly strong. Mercedes reverted to the old floor specification on Saturday. That was partly down to it being a known package in the expected wet conditions, but also because of problems with bouncing and balance. Trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin explained that this was down to the setup, rather than any concern with the upgrade itself. Running using the old specification floor, Mercedes finished first and second on the road. Although Russell was disqualified for being underweight, that meant Hamilton took Mercedes' third win in 4 races. The floor reappeared at the first race after the summer break, the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. Mercedes struggled badly for consistency that weekend, not helped by the windy and sometimes wet conditions that technical director James Allison argued contributed to the team's failure to get in the groove. Russell and Hamilton finished 7th and 8th in the race, with tyre struggles meaning it slipped behind the Ferraris. The balance problems Mercedes had there led to question marks about the characteristics the floor was creating. The problem further crystallised at Monza, where Hamilton finished 5th and Russell 7th. Team principal Toto Wolff said the trouble was that the car could be quick over a single lap, hence Russell qualifying 3rd, but lacked the balance to keep the tyres happy for a race stint. After analysis at its Brackley base between races, the decision was made to park the revised floor for the Baku weekend. Hamilton suggested the team wasn't entirely sure that the floor was the problem, but his gut feeling indicated it was to blame. The Mercedes was the 4th best car in Baku in its regressed specification. The car showed promise, with Russell topping FP3 despite problems on Friday that forced a power unit change, but in qualifying he was half a second off in 5th place. Hamilton was 7th fastest but started from the pits after a strategic decision to introduce a new power unit following a failure during the Australian Grand Prix weekend back in March. But that qualifying performance was below par thanks to tyre temperature troubles, the consequence of both drivers having to do slower outlaps to allow time for the yellow flag for Alex Albon's Williams to clear. Hamilton also had problems on top of that, explaining that after having a great car on Friday, there was a problem with a component that wasn't correctly built that led the team the wrong way. While that was corrected with changes before the race, his weekend was already doomed, and he had a difficult run to 9th place after a pit lane start. Even so, Russell felt that this proved the return to the old floor had not improved matters. Russell was set to finish a distant 5th when a late crash eliminated Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez, promoting him to the podium. Even with Red Bull struggling, that meant Mercedes was only the 4th best car in Baku. So what's going wrong for Mercedes? Well, it's not necessarily that it's going in the wrong direction. First and foremost, it's important to note that while Mercedes is a little disappointed with its form, it's hardly a sudden reversal. That run of wins was on tracks that suited the car, often with circumstances on its side. That doesn't diminish the achievement given where Mercedes was coming from, but does add important context to what followed. Zandvoort with its long, slow and medium speed corners didn't suit the car, while at Monza the high temperatures and the difficulties hustling the car into the slow turns made life difficult. It was a similar story in Azerbaijan, where the key to lap time is being able to attack on the brakes and entries to the slow 90-degree corners. There is uncertainty about the floor, but the troubles appear wider than that. The Mercedes is a sensitive car, with a tendency for performance to swing from session to session and even tyre set to tyre set. Indeed, the Pirellis are something that Russell says he finds pretty infuriating. In Baku, he said he was 1.5 seconds off the pace early on, then in the last 20 laps he was a second quicker than the leaders, and the only thing that changed was going from medium to hard tyres. While he's slightly exaggerating the pace in the closing stages, it was more like half a second quicker, the difference is marked. And Russell blamed the tyres, suggesting even Pirelli doesn't really understand how they work. But ultimately, it's the same for everyone, and the way the tyres react can reflect balance sensitivities in the car. So while it's true that getting the tyres working and consistently in the window can have huge performance benefits, that's the test all teams face. It's possible the new floor could be playing a part in the struggles Mercedes has had, but as Hamilton admitted once he got some running under his belt in Baku, the old and new floor are ultimately very similar in terms of their performance. But the data gathered will have benefited Mercedes, which will also take the old specification floor to the second race of this back-to-back in Singapore. Whether or not it will also run the new version there, which it also has available, remains to be seen, but the team has indicated it's likely to stick with the old version. Team principal Toto Wolff has confirmed Mercedes is likely to have a new floor for the United States Grand Prix in Austin in late October, and it'll have plenty of time to produce that given the 1 month gap between Singapore and that race. The question is whether Mercedes has a full understanding of the causes of its troubles, and indeed if its floor direction is a problem at all. The Spa upgrade featured what were described as subtle changes to the diffuser roof profile designed to increase airflow acceleration and therefore increase downforce. More visible were the changes to the floor edges, with modifications to the floor edge wing and an additional flap element added. As ever, with floor updates under the current regulations, pushing for more downforce can cause problems either in terms of the consistency of aerodynamic load or the impact on balance. The question is whether Mercedes really understands what changes it needs to make. Wolff admits that it's difficult to get to the bottom of the reasons for the performance swings fully. However, that's exactly what Mercedes needs to do if it's to build on that encouraging run before the summer break. But one thing is clear, it's far more complicated than a floor upgrade that didn't work as hoped. As Wolff says, the new floor didn't work properly, but the old one seems to have the same problem. And the team has also conceded that its cars continue to excel at some, but not all tracks. That's been the case throughout this rules era, and of the 7 circuits remaining, Wolff pointed to just 2 more, Austin and Interlagos, that have traditionally suited it. The fact there's still similar performance patterns on show indicates Mercedes hasn't entirely solved all the problems it has been battling. After all, under these rules in particular, it's rare anyone finds a quick solution for all its troubles. Mercedes has made huge gains this year, returning to winning ways and finally convincing the watching world that it really does have what it takes to succeed under these ground effect rules. But having made those strides, like many teams, Mercedes has run into problems when it comes to sustaining development of this current generation of cars. That's why understanding and fixing the problems it's currently battling, whether they are related to the floor design or not, is so crucial. After all, get it right, and there's no reason why Mercedes can't fight for the World Championship next year. But get it wrong, and it could face a very frustrating 2025.